and our Culture Board, which is a strategic group of city partners in Bristol and some in the wider region, to support the development of culture and creative industries in our city. So this is for us to really understand what is going on for freelancers and artists at the moment. So we've invited 3 brilliant union reps from 3 different places, to come and give a 10-minute presentation, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A. I'm going to be really tight on timings, so please don't be at all offended if I need to pause you. I'll be doing it to everybody. And I'll introduce everyone in a moment. Then we will have 10 minutes at the end for broader questions. The session is recorded so that we can make sure that we can share the recording with people that can't be here. And we'll have a transcript that we can share with anyone who'd also like to read that. Please use this session however you need to. Stand up, walk around, turn your camera on and off if you need to. But I will request that when you're not speaking, your mic is off so that we can make sure that we can manage the background sound. If for whatever reason someone hasn't remembered to do that and I do it, just know that it was me. Okay, so first, we're going to be hearing from Equity. We're going to be hearing from Kai Dard and Linda Rook. Then we're going to hear from Kevin Carlson and Carwyn Donovan from Beck2. And then from the Musicians Union, we're going to be hearing from Andy Wernick. Sarah, did you say that the person is presenting or isn't?
No, that's it. It's all fine.
Okay, great. And then we're going to have 10 minutes for questions. So this is our opportunity to really understand from those union reps' point of view how freelancers and artists are dealing with the current cultural climate. So I'm going to hand over to Kai and Linda for their presentation from Equity. Thank you very much. And I'm going to time you. Let's start the timer. Thanks.
Thank you, Elise. And obviously people may know me in a different guise on this call, but obviously I'm wearing my my Equity hat today. I think there's about 3 or 4 things we'd like to cover. So we've got the cultural investment program, which obviously is quite key to this call, and the impact that has locally. And we'd like to talk about the local supply chain, Bottle Yard Studios. Also like to talk about the relationship with WECA, because there's lots of funding going through that organisation. And one of the key aims of WECA is sort of investment in the cultural industries and the impact that has on the local economy. And then if we've got enough time, I can probably touch on some of the stuff we're doing nationally that has an impact locally in terms of the big negotiations that we have with the industry. I'll just pass over briefly to Linda Rook, who's the president of Equity, just to double check that I've covered everything that we want to talk about. Linda might want to introduce herself as well.
Hi everybody. My name is Linda Rook. I'm an actor and I'm president of Equity UK, and I'm based in Bristol, and I was on the Culture Board. Yeah, very much what Kai's been talking about, and just to update you on the fact that currently the precarity in the industry for freelance self-employed people, which is the people that we represent, is pretty bad, and that includes in the Southwest and in Bristol. If you live in the Southwest and you live in Bristol, there's a very good chance you don't work in the Southwest as an actor. In fact, I rarely do. And I think it's been the city, that prides itself on culture. I think these things need to be addressed, but we can do that during the thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda. Yeah, and just to come on to sort of arts funding, obviously a lot of people on the call will know this, and there's always a lot of focus on the money that comes from the Arts Council. But we know over recent years, actually, if you add up all the money that used to be invested in arts and culture from local authorities, it was a bigger sum than the Arts Council gave nationally. So over recent years, that's gradually diminished. So it's sort of a traditionally important source of funding that's it's gradually disappearing. We're quite lucky that, well, I don't know if I should use the word luck, but Bristol obviously still funds the arts locally to a degree, although we've had the 12-month pause on the cultural investment programme. But we also recognise that other local authorities have completely withdrawn their funding for arts and culture over recent years, and some of them in neighbouring authorities, which has obviously had a massive impact on smaller organisations locally, and also the work locally that our members can access. I do think it's short-sighted, and we often see a lot of information that comes out about the impact a small amount of investment in the cultural economy has on the wider economy. And there was a newsletter that went out recently about Bristol, that £1 invested brings back £88 in return. And I know these are kind of big macroeconomic arguments, but obviously that's a stark return on investment. But I think we could get a bit better, because often I think the argument is, well, what does that bring back to the council itself? And I think often we don't sort of get down into the granular detail about how much income is generated back into the council directly through car parking, business rates from restaurants and other pubs, and companies that are connected to cultural venues and institutions. I don't think we have that granular detail, so we can see that real direct benefit to the council. So if you cut that investment, the car park's no longer full, so that's a drop in income. Businesses close around venues. I don't think we've got that granular detail, and I think we could probably get better at that as a local authority, so we're better informed on the value of making that investment going forward. And I think that would potentially change decision makers' views on the value of making those investments going forward. I don't know if you want to add anything, Linda, to that sort of particular point about the cultural investment programme locally.
Absolutely. Basically, yeah, there is a multiplier effect. There is an economic multiplier effect on those things. Arts Council England 2019 did a report, and the report was about when local governments withdrew funding, etc., what replaced it. And of those institutions and organisations that had their funding cut, 41% said they were not able to get it from any private investment, which I know is something that has been mentioned within the council as regards to supplementing council funding. So it is not something that is easily acquired, especially for grassroots and community organisations. They will struggle really hard to be able to do that. I'd also say this, having lived in Bristol for 32 years, why do people want to live there? Why do they want to live in Bristol? And the fact is, they see it as a cultural, thriving hub of a city where they can go to theatres, music venues, cinema, and they know that this place is used continually for filming, etc. You start pulling the rug from under those things, and what you do more than anything is impact on future generations coming through education, especially state education, where performing arts is being cut back like size through the whole thing. And basically what you'll see is less and less people from working class, marginalised communities coming through into the arts, and some of them who are in the arts already failing to stay there because longevity of career will not be there. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to move on to the Bottle Yard Studios. That's sort of a live issue for us locally as a union. Obviously, it's been a huge success film production based out of the Bottle Yard. We've seen a recent report to say that there was a 55% increase on the gross value added to the economy last year from film production in Bristol and based from the Bottle Yard. We're very concerned about the sale at the moment. One, because we don't know who it is. So we don't know if they're a good partner. We don't know if they know the industry. We don't know what their working practice is like. We're also very concerned about how the relationship with the Bristol Film Office might be affected going forward, and also the local supply chain, because at the moment it's a highly valuable source of employment for people behind the camera, but also in front of the camera. And obviously, given that there's some local control over that institution and business, we're very concerned about what's going to happen in the future, partly because it's all being done behind closed doors. We don't know any of the information. We don't have any guarantees about any protections for that local supply chain and opportunities for our members and BEC2 members and MU members going forward. So yeah, we again, hopefully we will hear some news about that in the coming weeks. But as there's a sort of a vacuum of information, it's not something that we can support at the moment, and we sort of remain opposed to that. But we're happy to be proved wrong. It could be someone very good that is really good for the industry, but given the lack of information, it's not something that we can support at the moment. I don't know if you want to add anything about the bottle yard there, Linda.
Just to say, I just want to know why a joint venture has not been considered as a potential as well, rather than just looking at individual proposals coming from outside or whatever for that bottle yard studios, where there's some chance of Bristol having a voice there. Thank you.
And then I'd just like to move on to WECA. Obviously, right across the country, we're seeing new combined authorities set up. A lot of investment is being funneled through these combined authorities right across the country. And most of them have identified the sort of cultural industries as a sort of a good bet to get behind. We've seen, I think it was £3.1 million spent recently by WECA working with the cultural sector. I don't think there was any union involvement in that previous decision-making process. That may have been an oversight, but I think going forward, we'd like to see more union involvement within the decision-making processes at WECA around where the investment sits, because we can bring a different perspective. Because obviously we're representing the performers that work in the industry on a daily basis. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Linda.
I think we're at the end.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at the end.
Sorry, Linda. That was perfect, though. Bang on 10 minutes. Brilliant.
Sorry about that. For just going slightly over there.
No
happy
need
to pick up things in
apologise.
questions.
Yeah, so we've got 5 minutes for questions now. If anyone would like to ask any questions or make any responses. Bibs.
And he's over there. Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. Good to hear your thoughts about the impact on the cultural sector. My question is more in regards with the level of insights that you're gathering from in terms of your audience, demographics, and just mind my ignorance. I don't know much about the members that you represent. But one thing that's 1 second, Annie's over there. Annie's over there in the meeting. One thing that consistently pops out, and this is on the Go West report that's been written a number of times, is a lack of inclusion within the creative sector. And obviously that lack of inclusion within the creative sector links to the lack of representation in the creative sector, content creation, income generating, from behind the cameras to in front of the cameras, even with Channel 4 being here. So I think there's other communities that have consistently felt the lack of reach within the creative sector long before any of these current issues. But as you're aware, funding for the arts is not necessarily a statutory offer from any local authority. It is an additional service. So with the current pressures within the current administration, how do you think that engagement with the creative sector has been to really clearly ensure that the council's role has been more of a supportive one, but within these challenges, there's different discussions that are to be had. Do you feel that those discussions have been held properly or not properly? Are you in a clear understanding of the situation within each local authority to really see that they've been supporting? But if things are so tough, then the support also start to reduce. So it'd be good just to get your understanding of, you know, your own local authorities and also the representation within the creative sector before local authorities influence or support.
Thanks for that. Yeah, I'll just briefly say who Equity represent. So we mainly represent people in front of the camera or on stage, so actors, dancers, singers. But then in the theatre, we also represent directors and designers and stage managers. We tend not to represent people behind the camera in film and TV. It's wholly performers in that industry, stunt men and women, actors mainly, and Bectu would represent people behind the camera. Yeah, you're very right to point out the issues around diversity in the industry, and I think Linda could probably speak to that better than I can about the state of the industry at the moment from that point of view. And I think in terms of engagement with local authorities, we have had engagement in Bristol over recent years, but it's been quite patchy. I would say outside of Bristol, it's been even more patchy than that. And it is welcome that we've been invited here today, along with the other unions. And I think if something like this can continue going forward, I think that would be a positive step in terms of how you review that approach. But I think I'll just hand over to Linda. I think she's in a much better position to answer the question about the diversity in the industry at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The employers are the people that you look to in the organisations, the lack of diversity. Over the years, the elite nature of the industry is reflected by those who make those decisions. Those are not my members. Those are the people who run the organisations. Those are the people who are in positions of power and control. My members are the freelance, self-employed people who go along and interview and audition for work, like musicians do, etc. So we're not the people that are the gatekeepers. We're not those people. The people who are the gatekeepers are the ones who receive any funding, whatever, and do not respect the locality in which they work. And I think that could be evident in this city of Bristol. If you want to see good investment, go to Liverpool. Liverpool's fantastic. Liverpool has increased its investment in culture and the arts. Of course it would do. It's a northern city. I say that with a bias. But the point being is that, you know, that is what's needed to do it. Because if you want growth, and if you want growth quickly, one of the ways to do it is through the creative industries and culture and the performing arts. And where it's failing, as I said before, is in education, state education, and encouraging those from marginalized communities and low economic status communities to be able to get into the industry, first of all, and then sustain a living in that industry.
Thanks, Linda. That's bang on the 1 minute that we had left too. And a good place to stop your section and move to Bectu. Annie, is it okay if we hold your question till right at the end? Thank you. Okay, well, thank you for that. Really insightful. And I agree, this is something that we need to do more of. And as we're developing the cultural strategy, the union's involvement is vital. So now we're going to hear from Bectu, which is Kevin Carson and Carwyn Donovan. So if you want to get going, I'll set your timer. I'll give you a 5-minute warning and a 1-minute warning. Thanks.
Okay, just making sure people can see my screen in terms of that.
Yeah,
I can see that, Kev.
It's not on presenter mode. It's there we go. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Yeah, should be in presenter mode now. So, okay, great. So yeah, we're back to. So I'm Kevin Carson from the Broadcast Entertainment Communications and Theatre Union. Just to kind of talk about what us and Carwyn Donovan is also here. I represent theatre workers and on that side of the industry in the Southwest and the South as a regional official, and Carwyn represents Wales and in terms of theatre and but also film and television in the Southwest as well as Wales. So Carwyn. So yeah, basically from our, let's see if this is actually working in terms of advancing my slides. So there we go. Come on. There we go. So just to kind of give you a background of who we are, BECTU is a sector of Prospect, which is a larger union. So we cover film, television, and BBC, theatre, live events, cinemas, art galleries, and leisures in terms of that. But in terms of we have about 40,000 members there. Prospect Union covers a much wider group of people in terms of all of those different kind of sectors that you can kind of see there, and we have about 160, nearly 160,000 members across the piece. But just to kind of give you a little bit of a background, there's a little short kind of thing from our perspective, which I'm actually going to skip over because I realize we're going to be in time. But Carwyn, do you want to talk about who we represent in terms of the scale of who we represent?
Yes, and thank you to colleagues for giving us the time this morning to explain who we are and what we do and how we might be able to help you. So BECTU represents workers behind the camera in film and TV and offstage in theatre and live events. And I think, you know, it's important when we talk about culture, one tends to think about theatres and opera and things like that, but we cannot underestimate the important role which television production plays in telling our story. So we've got, as Kevin said, there nearly 40,000 members within our ranks, and we do a lot of surveying of the membership. And in March 2025, it showed that nearly 60% of the respondents were freelancers. The remainder being, of course, staff members in broadcasters and independent television production companies and theatres. So we've got a good mix, I feel, you know, to take the views of both staff workers, staff employees, and freelancers and self-employed. Thank you.
So, Carwyn, this is your point as well.
Oh, there we are. Excellent. Well, there we are. So issues that our members are facing currently, it's the precarious working, really. 78% of our members were out of work in September 2023. Now, that was largely due to, at the time, the SAG-AFTRA dispute in film and television in America, which caused broadcasters and commissioners to hold back in the UK. And 43% of those workers were still out of work earlier this year. So there's been a real perfect storm, really. We've had a very difficult 5 years, which started with the pandemic. There was mild recovery after that in all of our sectors. I think it's important to note that theatres were much worse affected by the pandemic due to the nature of pulling people together in one common space. So they were obviously precluded severely from being able to operate during the pandemic. And what we saw was many workers were able to adapt their skills and their work to work in film and TV. And that's a point of concern that we'll come on to in a bit. But I think there's it generally, and of course we got through the pandemic, then we had the SAG-AFTRA dispute in America, and it's little things then like Trump's statements in the last month or so there about whacking huge tariffs on foreign made films as he saw them that are still causing turbulence within our industry. But all of these things come on top of the systemic problems which exist within our industry, and they all relate to the precarious nature of the work in terms of freelance engagements. And I think that covers it without going on to the next slide, Kevin.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
again, from our perspective, long hours culture is always endemic in terms of what we in terms of the workers that we represent. We've run various campaigns across the last few years in terms of that around long hours culture, and it's something that we'd like to kind of do something about, and that's something that we've been campaigning on in terms of trying to do various pieces in terms of how this is, because again, it's feast and famine as far as film and television production work goes, and the long hours culture of theatre, having a theatre dark is always a thing that you don't want. So again, it's always pressure in terms of trying to get these shows on. So long hours culture is something that's very important to our members to help us try to have a normal 9 to 5 is not what our members are used to, and they certainly would like to try to get something done a little bit about that. But the other thing as well, in terms of this, is bullying, harassment, Carwyn.
Yeah. So that's particularly, prevalent, unfortunately, in our industries. And I think a lot of that, again, goes back to the precarious nature of the contracts, i.e. that people are rightfully reluctant to raise complaints, for genuine complaints, for the fear of the impact that this will have in their careers. Their engagement period is very often over a fixed term with no mutuality of obligation beyond that point. So there is a well-held fear, I would say, of raising complaint with simply inappropriate behaviour for fear of the impact that has on one's career. It's also important to note the acute power imbalances that are quite unique to our industries. So where you've got big names, and you'll have seen the reporting over the last week, which follows a whole trail of similar behaviour from on-screen and on-stage talent that have simply been unable to behave appropriately. And we regret to note that even where people have been brave enough to raise those complaints, that action has not been taken where it should have been, for fear of upsetting viewer figures and things like that. So that's a particularly important issue for our members.
I just realized we have about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to kind of race through some of these unfair recruitment practices, skills shortage, which we could talk about more. Artificial intelligence is a concern, but ultimately we get down to 33% of workers surveyed do not see themselves working in the creative industry in 5 years, and that's up from 24% a year ago. So that's where our members are feeling the point. I'm going to move on to some of the things that we would like to see in terms of this conversation. If I can get my slides to advance. Hold on. So I need to skip this slide if I can. Oh, it's going to do all the building. Oh, come on. Doesn't help.
But there is an important point while you're saying that, Kevin, there about the recruitment. I think that's the councillor who asked a question earlier about equality, diversity and inclusion. Well, look, that's the biggest problem that we've got, is that the recruitment processes that are used in our industry are simply not fit for purpose, and it is rare to see jobs even advertised now. They tend to be going to people who you've worked alongside before, which is a huge barrier aside from fairness, but it's a huge barrier and undoes a lot of the work that the union does to make our workplaces more representative of our societies.
So in the last 30 seconds, Carwyn, do you want to talk about what we're looking for in terms of that top line?
Yep.
And then we can say the rest of it is there.
So we do have a good model here in Wales, okay, which recognises that we get more done between employers, trade unions and local government. And that recognises that where organisations and companies are getting public money, as it were, that they are expected to adhere to some principles of fairness, such as dignity at work policies, such as the creation of the freelance champions, and the equality, diversity, and inclusion targets as well.
I've got 10 minutes and 20 seconds. Are we up?
You are up.
Okay.
Thank you. I understand we're asking you to talk about lots of information in a short period of time. But as I said, this is the start of the conversation. Could you stop sharing your screen, please?
Yeah,
thank you. That was really insightful. Much appreciated. We've now got 5 minutes for questions. So if anyone, put your hands up if you'd like to ask a question. Councillor Eddie, Richard.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't demute myself. Why do you think we've improved things in Wales to a bit more than in Scotland and England?
Well, I think it's largely due to that social partnership model. We've got a government that recognises, as I say, that engaging with by engaging with the trade unions, it can reach the workforce, that it can take the views of the workforce, and I think the Welsh government's been very good at that. But also those measures that I mentioned that ensure that where public money is being used, proper policies and proper procedures are implemented, and that is a condition of money being awarded there. Thank you.
I'd say, from my perspective, Scotland is well developed on this and this conversation as well. The relationship between Bech2 and Creative Scotland is about to release a report on terms of which is asking for the same kind of thing in terms of putting that into that. The relationship between Arts Council England and Bech2 is not quite as well developed from that point of view, but there are some central government things like the Freelance Commissioner for freelancers that we're looking at, because again, I think it plays into that thing in terms of the self-employed creative market is so much driven by freelancers, and the problems are very inherent, that there are things that the law can actually help out with, that it's just not designed to, because of the way that we use self-employment in this industry.
Thank you. Shona.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the first part of it. I've had a mad morning with some childcare stuff. In terms of the creative partnership model that's in Wales, is there ideas of how, if that's possible to replicate on a local authority level, like whether that's even legally possible? And if so, like, are there starting documents or starting suggestions for how that could be looked?
Well, I don't think one needs to change the legislation to have to expect, where public money is awarded, that there are some standards that are met in the work that is provided, the operations that are being provided. I think that is simply a case of qualifying, making that some of the qualifying criteria for receiving money, that you have these things in place, that you recognize trade union agreements and things like that. So I'm not sure that there's any legislative changes that are required to bring the standard up. It is merely an expectation of the council, I would say.
I'm just thinking that would probably, that sounds brilliant, that if that's something we could implement as the council, I'm thinking that would probably need to be written up as some sort of policy that gets agreed by one of the committees. And I was just wondering what the starting point was for that, or if there was any, if this had happened with any other councils in England already.
Well, I can certainly share a bit more information on it with you, if that would help. But I'm not sure we'll be able to work that through in the limited time we've got here now. But by all means, if we can exchange addresses, I'll be able to do that. But it's just about recognising fairness, really, isn't it? If we could get one thing done this year, it would be to ensure that people had fair and equitable opportunity to apply for jobs, and that would improve not only the standard of work that's done, because we'll be bringing new ideas and ideas from different communities into the work that we produce, but also it will make our workplaces more representative of our society. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Annie.
Hi, thanks. Hi, I'm Annie. I'm co-chair of the Culture Board and a theatre professional myself. I used to be back to union rep when I worked for WNO, actually. But yeah, so hi. The thing I wanted to ask, and the same thing I wanted to ask Linda as well, was what is the diversity? Do you have a diversity breakdown of your membership for Vector and for Equity, and how does the local Bristol membership kind of correspond with the national diversity membership, and how does that kind of track on to demographics of the country?
Well, we can provide you with that, but I couldn't bring them off the top of my head, okay? But we can certainly provide you with those. But I will share a secret with you. They will be shocking, okay? Because our membership is representative of the industry as it stands, not our communities. That's the work that we want to do, is to change that balance. But before we can bring people into our membership, they have to be working in the industry, or they have to feel like they can get work in the industry. So that's why we've been doing important work with councillors in Wales, for instance, to bring underrepresented communities together with broadcasters and with people like the WNO to show them that there is a future for them in the arts. There is a future for them in broadcasting, and it is merely the structures which have worked against them. So we aim to tackle that problem by introducing them to the employers, potential employers, and that's the role of the union. We see it.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Now we're going to thank you very much, Bruce, for your presentation and questions. Now we're going to move to Musicians Union and hear from Andy Pernock. Thanks, Andy.
So, James.
Everyone, can you see my presentation? It's quite a long time since I've had on Teams.
We can hear, we can see the presentation, but your microphone is a bit wibbly wobbly, like you're in a piece of water.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm not sure what to do about that. God, I hope that works. Maybe just my dodgy internet. Right. So if you can see that, we'll get on with it. So I'm Andy. I'm the regional organiser for the Musicians Union in Wales and South West England.
Sorry, Andy. Sorry to interrupt you, Andy. I think the sound is so bad. It's really difficult to hear. Could you turn your mic on and off and see if that makes any kind of difference, or maybe turn your camera off if that makes a difference to the signal?
Let's try it back. I'm having some real tech issues today, so I'm sorry about that. I don't quite know why.
Oh, turning your camera has made a difference to your microphone. Yeah, right. Thank you.
That's no problem. I'm sorry about that. It's yeah, hard to solve these things when they happen. Right. I'll get on with it. So yeah, I'm Andy. I manage our work in Wales and South West England. I'll try and cover a few different things here, kind of as an introduction to us and what we do as a starting point, and then maybe we can go into some details if there's time. So, Musicians Union has been around since 1893. We are the union for musicians in the UK. We've got over 36,000 members, and we aim to, include and support all musicians across all areas of the music industry, all genres, across all parts of the UK. A really good membership at the moment. So we are a trade union. Hopefully most of you know what that means, but for anyone who doesn't, real back to basics, that means we're run by members for members. There's no conflict of interest. We're not funded by anyone else. We're democratic and representative. So I'd note as part of that, given some of the earlier questions, we have had a real focus for some time on equality issues within the music industry, particularly through our central EDI team. That links back to kind of what Equity and Vector have been saying about kind of diversity across the industry as a whole, and then B, increasing the diversity of our membership, and particularly within the different committees and groups that we've got within the MU. that kind of make the decisions and represent members. We do a lot of collective bargaining, particularly with orchestras and industry bodies like the BPI, so that there are kind of traditional formal union contracts and rates that have to be followed for certain types of work. So an example would be, recording work with the BBC or for film and TV. And then we also have a lot of services and benefits that are tailored to musicians that I'll try and come on to in a moment. We're also an industry body. We work with a wide range of organisations across the music industry. Oh, that's weird. That's the wrong text. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, we can see some of them there. I've noted the main one that's missing from there is Live, which has got a bit of a weirdly generic name, but that represents the live music industry. They work on the arena ticket levy, if you've heard anything about that in particular. So yeah, I work a lot with all these organisations, particularly kind of UK music, in terms of work at Westminster and other organisations that represent creators. Yeah, I'll carry on, keep going. One of the key things that we do, particularly in relation to those groups, is campaigning and lobbying. That's international through FIM, which is the International Federation of Musicians, and partnerships with musicians unions around the world. Also across the UK with government at all levels. So that's the UK government, a lot of focus over the last few years with the Welsh government in Wales, but also the local authorities and councils around the UK. And that's on issues specific to music. So things like, issues with music venues, for instance. It's also the broader creative industry. So for instance, we're heavily involved in CISA, which is this new independent standards body for the creative industries, but also broader issues that concern our members. So things like, again, equalities, the welfare cuts recently is something that we've had concerns about. So kind of a whole range of broader issues as well. Then services and benefits, so kind of some background for you, so you know what we do. These are all tailored to musicians, a whole range of things, too many to list now. Our real focus for us is legal advice in different ways. So that's unpaid fees and council work, the real kind of ongoing constant issue for us. So anything from weddings to grassroots venues and help supporting members with that. A whole range of contracts. So for instance, with record labels, publishers, agents, again, also live contracts, contracts between musicians sometimes, partnership agreements, whole range of things that we work on with that and make sure members get good advice from solicitors where it's needed, and also employment. So the majority of our members are self-employed or kind of freelance, which is a general category where you're having a portfolio career. Maybe you've got 1 or 2 days that are employed with something like a music service, but you're doing a whole range of things as well. It's not just one job. A few are employed, mainly working in orchestras, or a few of the kind of music services doing music education, but the vast majority are working around different things. But for those members who are employed, we support them with grievances, disciplinary issues, employment contracts, all those sorts of things as well. Insurance is a big focus for members, just for the financial implications of some of the work they do. So instrument and equipment insurance, a whole range of other kind of personal things. Health and safety is a really broad issue. Again, if you're thinking about freelancers and the work they do, Vector and Equity have both spoken about some of the issues that comes with that. So health and safety is a real key kind of ongoing background issue. And then general support, which includes things like well-being, careers advice, training, support with discrimination and inappropriate behaviour. Again, that's been talked about already. But yeah, it covers kind of a whole range of different areas. In terms of our region, the MU is split up into 6 regions, and quite large, cover the whole of the UK. So we have an office in Cardiff, but then have activists and reps across the region. Me and my colleagues cover, across the area, right down to Cornwall, up to North Wales and Anglesey. We've got regular training events around the region to try and support members who are often quite isolated in the work they do, or maybe work with a few key people like their band or some close colleagues, but otherwise maybe don't necessarily see people very regularly. And then have lots of local political engagements. So some examples for us would be Creative Wales, which is a branch of Welsh Government, Welsh Labour, Cardiff Music Board, Plymouth Music Board, Bristol Nights, various the TUC in Wales and in the Southwest, and then various kind of trades councils and constituency Labour parties that are kind of particularly local. Priorities. These are kind of a few things I guess I've picked out. that are kind of key to us in various different ways. So one, as Equity talked about in particular, is arts and culture funding. The last 14, 15 years, we've just seen ongoing cuts in that area. And that's really key for supporting our members' work across a whole range of areas. So I think that's going to be a surprise, and I guess a lot of broad concerns probably along the lines of what Equity talked about in particular. One thing I'd note particularly in relation to Bristol is this Citizens for Culture scheme that's happening at the moment. I actually have real concerns about that, and that's something that I'd really welcome the opportunity to talk about in more detail outside this session. I think, there's some interesting ideas there, but I've got some kind of concerns and questions around that's going to work. I put professionalising the sector. I think one of the key things that our members come across is in a variety of different ways, the way that the creative industries aren't always, first of all, aren't always treated as kind of work in the same way that other things are, and aren't necessarily understood. And I wouldn't necessarily talk about Bristol in this sense, because Bristol Nights, for instance, has been a really fantastic issue. But I'd say certainly in some areas, there is a real tendency to default towards kind of 9-to-5 work, and kind of more traditional office jobs, the focus for councils. And so I think the nighttime economy and making sure that that's supported is a thing to do with that. Again, work not play is our campaign to make sure that people are paid for their work in this area, but also then the kind of more detailed work that happens in the industry. So making sure that venues are using contracts, they're thinking about their rates, making sure that members are taking the right care for all the different work they do. I think that's a key focus for us in lots of ways. AI and streaming are real issues kind of across the UK at the moment. I don't think that's going to be any surprise. Streaming's been a focus for a while. We know that as the industry over the last 20 years or so has shifted away from physical media and CDs and things to streaming, that's had a real effect on members' work, and that's something that we're really working a lot of detail on. And AI, I'm not going to go into lots of detail about, because that's a real hot topic at the moment, but kind of comparable concerns there. Music education is a real kind of constant issue for us, both because a lot of our members work in that area. It's a real important source of work, and where some of the larger organisations are, but also making sure that there's that talent pipeline, and that children and young people around the UK are having the right opportunities to access music and music education and come through. Opportunities to work in all sorts of ways. For me, this kind of covers things like protecting grassroots music venues, which has been a real hot topic in Bristol at various points of the last few years. Again, thinking about funding, but also funding, I suppose, for work that's outside the traditional kind of arts and kind of classical music and things like that. And just trying to make sure that there are those opportunities there for members, and that they're able to access work fairly. So thinking about issues to do with people like agents, for instance, that we come across. And then freelancers I've put as a specific point, just because, again, there's so many of our members work in that way. That kind of links back to the professionalisation in a sense, but just that making sure there's that real focus. Even the fact that some people have talked about, equalities legislation, health and safety, various different things. A lot of it still leans towards even benefits, also stuff leans towards employees, and making sure that members who work as freelancers are really supported and protected in a variety of ways. I think that's my 10 minutes. And that's our contact details. There we go.
Thank you, Andy. That was really thorough and clear. Thank you very much. We've now got 5 minutes. Any direct questions for Andy, and then we'll have 5 minutes to kind of wrap up the session. So we've got Sips has got a question.
Yes, thanks for that presentation. I know in terms of Black musicians or cultural music, one of the core things that they find as a challenge is events licensing, and then policing when there's cultural events, and also not necessarily getting the right venues. So the size of venues reduces the amount of income they can make. Policing restricts when they can play, which audience. So I'd like to kind of get a bit of maybe what are you doing in terms of that situation that's really affecting minoritized artists to really reach or produce the content that the audience prefers without that, being over policed for the content that's put out. I'd say that's one. In terms of both presentations, all three presentations, one of the ways that we're looking at increasing inclusion within the arts is really about supporting organizations to become Ofsted registered, because that means that parents on low income and those on universal credits can be able to access those as after school curriculum activities, and they'll be able to get at least 85% off based on universal credit support. Those not on universal credit will be able to at least get 25% off. Is that a way through that you feel, if you had the support to become Ofsted registered, that would be an opportunity for you to diversify these sectors? Thanks.
Thanks for those questions. In terms of what you're saying about black music in particular, events licensing, all sorts of things, I think that's actually a real, I worry that it's a real kind of taboo issue almost. That's something I've got real concerns about. I think that's, it's become a kind of known about issue that's discussed relatively openly these days in London. And it's not really discussed outside London, is my experience. I have conversations every now and then with members about it. And I've one relatively recently that was more to do with Cardiff. But yes, I think that is a real potential issue, but it's just not really talked about. We don't really even get members coming to us to talk about it. And so my message would be, if people do have concerns about that in Bristol or anyone else, please come and talk to us, because I think it's obviously a delicate issue in some ways, but I think it probably is happening. And it's only London where it's really come to the surface and actually been kind of talked about more openly. So I think I'm really happy to have conversations about that. I think that's an important topic. And trying to find the right forum for that to happen. In terms of Ofsted, I mean, I think the interesting thing about childcare, I'm pretty sure that at our conference next week, we've actually got a motion being discussed around childcare, because the problem that our members have is actually childcare more broadly, which is that if you're working in music, a lot of your work is going to be in the evening, at night, or at least it's going to be really variable hours. So the problem is whether there are even childcare providers that are open, if there's actually, who you actually even use. And so the problem is actually that our members highlight is, the offers are different in England and Wales, but there's different offers open to people to try and use. But most childcare is daytime, until say 6 o'clock, for instance. And actually the problem is just childcare availability at all when people are going to be working. So you're happy to have a conversation about that and dig into the Ofsted issues. I think there's definitely things there, but I think it's more about the kind of availability as a whole, and trying to fit your work around the childcare kind of as a whole is what I'd say.
Thank you. We've got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to come to Annie. She wanted to make a comment at the end, but also there was a question that you had earlier that you may or may not still want to ask. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the question was about diversity of sort of union membership, which is a question to everybody. I know you don't have it on top of your head, but if you could send that across, it'd be really useful, just because then it helps us get an idea of where the gaps are to help support you as well, and compare notes on that front. But I wanted just to speak to a point that kind of Kai made and Linda's made about historically there's not been a lot of union engagement with the council on this particular sector, and so I just wanted to reassure you that, so I'm the political lead for culture, and as I said, union member myself, and this is my professional sector as well. I understand how important it is. We know historically not as much as engagement as we'd have all liked. Going forward, let's forget about what's happened previously. That's why we sort of invited you along today, and why I asked Elise and Sarah to set this briefing up, is because we want to actually have a really good relationship with all of your unions going forward. So this is just the first part of a much better, healthier dialogue going forward. So I just wanted to reassure you that that's where we're coming from with this, and thank you for coming. It's been really useful.
Thanks. Sorry, can I just jump in on that actually, because it's something I forgot to say. I think I'd say that that's really good to hear. I think we work together quite a lot actually as 3 unions across the region. we work pretty well together, and I think happy to work together in relation to Bristol. I think it'd be really great to look at how we formalise that in some form, in relation to things like the culture board and making sure there are union seats. And I think a really important thing to say is that, in my experience, groups sometimes seek to involve kind of individual freelancers, and that's fantastic. That's a really great place to start. But I think the key is that what we bring as unions is then that kind of backup to the people who are on these groups. Or actually, it's not just an individual and bring their perspective, but actually we then got the organisation behind it, where we've got the committees looking at different areas of the industries. We've got the EDI teams, all those sorts of people that actually can support people who are on things like boards, and kind of provide some continuity and stuff like that in terms of representation. So I think there's things
Absolutely.
like that.
Can I just and just to respond to that particular point, because I know we have a member of Equity on the culture board at the moment, because they applied for it and I know that they've not come, actually, it turns out, as a representative of Equity. So that was just a communication issue, I think, around how people put themselves forward for the board. But when we refresh the board again, we will be taking that into account. There was a communication error, unfortunately, but there are other ways that you can feed into all of this, and we did have 3 times as many people and organisations apply for the boards than we could fit on. So we are doing a piece of work around how we keep all of those different organisations and freelancers involved as well. So you'll be definitely invited to take part in that part as well. I hope that kind of reassures you too.
Thanks, Annie. And thank you so much for our speakers for coming. It's the start of a really great relationship with the unions, as to back up what Annie's saying. And we want to make sure that you're involved in the development of the cultural strategy and working together. This has been a really valuable session. Thanks for your time and in preparation for it. Is there any other questions or anything that you want to pick up with us, please do. And hope you all have great afternoons. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.